Okay, guys, this is Luke Johnson from the Noetic teaching platform. We're back with another poetry installment from Charles Clifford Brooks III. Today he's going to tell us something about Keats.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. I'm glad to be here. Thank you, Luke, for having me back. And after talking about love last week with Butler Yeats, I started to think about the other side and the loss of sense of self, not in love so much as in what will be left of us when we shuffle off this rock. What memories will we leave? What footprints will we have behind us that lead people to something productive, to something that says we were here? The whole reason that we have tombstones at all, that we have graveyards at all, that we have mausoleums is to have something standing the test of time that says we were here. And all of civilizations before us, the most horrific idea to man was being forgotten. When you had leaders, pharaohs, kings that were not in favor of the people when they died or were overthrown, their names were literally chiseled in the idea of erasing the fact that they ever lived at all. And that is a terrifying notion. And it scares me because it's not one in my life to stand up in this grandiose form and say, I, Clifford Brooks, did this. I, Clifford Brooks, gave this to the people. I created this idea. But to leave an idea that I left the world better than it was when I found it. And in that time, especially for writers, it seems, or artists in general, that we have such a fear that we won't get that publishing deal, or we won't get that art gallery, or we won't get that spot in a photography magazine that cements our sense of self, not just to the others, but really to give ourselves, I'm real, I am here, I have said something that's important, and people have found that important too. Whether it be a new way of thinking, a new way of expressing a feeling, the idea that I've wrestled with many folks that, well, do artists really feel more than other people? And I don't believe that we feel as much as we do deeply. And that, I mean, that we are able to, as in poetry, take that everyone feels. Is the reason why we have so many romantic comedies or romantic movies, is because people all feel that, but they're not able to say, that's it. Or, honey, the way I feel about you is then that line, that poem, that sonnet, that soliloquy that that's captured those feelings that we adore the most about ourselves and about the other person, about life in general. I worry that, like with my girlfriend, that I will be able to express to her in words and actions how much she means to me, in a world where to find someone that you see eye to eye with, and that person that can hold your hand and be your teammate and your partner, is very, very rare. And it all comes back down to, I think, that kernel of instability and fear that all, and especially, poets and me and specifically, I fear most that I won't be able to get to her, or to those who want to express to their loved ones how they feel, that quintessential kernel of truth that springs forth into a garden that both of you can walk through, whether metaphorically or physically, planted hand by hand. How do we do that? How do we create a piece of ourselves on the page as an artist, as a writer, that will contain all of those things that we feel and hope and want to happen? And can we get it done before we shuffle off this earth? And so the poem I have picked, that I think is aptly named, When I Have Fears That I May Cease to Be, by John Keats. And the poem goes, when I have fears that I may cease to be, before my pen has gleaned my teeming brain, before high-piled books and character hold like rich garners the full ripened grain, when I behold upon the night's starred face huge cloudy symbols of a high romance, and think that I may never live to trace their shadows with the magic hand of chance, and when I feel, fair creature of an hour, that I shall never look upon thee more, never have relish in the fairy power of unreflecting love, then on the shore of the wide world I stand alone, and think till love and fame to nothingness do sink. When I have fears that I may cease to be. And in this poem, it opens with, again, the line that just, when I started to sit down today and try to figure out what poem best encapsulates these fears and hopes and dreams, and tried to make it a universal statement and a universal product of the collective human imagination, what better could you really sum it up in one sentence of what do you fear when you sense to be? Will your kids be okay? Will the company you build still stand? Will the poetry or the fiction, the photos or the paintings that you create, will the films that you put into production still be there to carry your name and show what was important to you to generation after generation to generation? What happens when you're gone and you can't have your hands on that anymore? When I have fears that I may cease to be. Maybe in your own lifetime, when you start to lose hold on your center and what's important to you, that could happen before you die. That could happen before you could essentially die in effect, when you lose hope in your own dreams. And when you don't have the right people around you to support you, not just that one that you love with your whole heart, but those friends that act as extended family, as well as those who are blood kin. Will they remember you? Will they be proud of you? How will they remember you? When I have fears that I may cease to be, before my pen has gleaned my teeming brain, before I'm able to write down all these fiery, infernal, paradisial moments and ideas, before I can put it all down on paper, what if I'm snatched by some random accident off this earth? Before high-piled books, and Lord, let me tell you, when I move, it would probably take me to move from one house to another about 5 to 10 minutes if it weren't for the boxes and boxes and boxes of books that in my study, I always have exactly the way they are and everywhere that I move, because it gives me that feeling of peace and my head inside organized around me, because much of life isn't. And those books give me that sense of feeling, and that family, that those people that have since ceased to be physically have gone on, and that I'm able to pull them off the shelves and find camaraderie and friendship and love. Before those books piled high in character and all of their lives that they explain, that hold rich garners of full ripened grain, lives lives and stories and poems that have been lived to their fullest. When I behold upon the night's starry face, huge cloudy symbols of high romance. And how many of us have looked to romance or looked to love, or laying out at night and looked at the stars with someone you loved and looked up and seen those clouds even there and twisting the shapes, and wondering if those who have ceased to be are up there looking down through the stars saying, it's going to be okay. Everything's going to work out. And think that I may never live to trace, that I may not live long enough to maybe to burn homage my own fears, and to burn away my own insecurities up into those clouds, and to touch those stars, to dissipate to where I'm a braver human being, to be able to say the things maybe that I've been afraid to say, or to express those things that I've been too insecure to stand upon and say, these are mine, and I give these to you. They're shadows with their magic hand of chance. Again, it's all chance. We can work as hard as we can, but there's always that little sliver of luck, or meeting that right person, or coming in contact with that right entity, like with the Southern Collective, or like with Noetic, where we're able to join together and create something better than ourselves, and stand together in a group, that when I have failed and ceased to be, that there are others that cared about me to carry on that, the same that I would extend to those who have chosen me, of all people, to stand beside and maybe take this journey along with me. And when I feel, fair creature of an hour, that I shall never look upon thee more. When you are maybe laying down and you're up at this night sky, and you see these beautiful clouds and a full moon and all of these dazzling stars far away from society, that you look over to that one that you love more than anything in the world, to say, when I'm not here, will you still remember me? Well, I have given you enough of me that I will live on in you. Whether you choose to love me now, tomorrow, the next day, next week, for the rest of our lives, whenever that stops, will I leave a good taste in your mouth? Will I leave a warm feeling in your heart that goes beyond all of these cliches of romance, but into something substantial, like the blood in your veins, the beating of our hearts, the way that we occupy that same space in the bed, when science and physics and all of it tells us that two things can't occupy the same place at the same time. Well, in love and in life, sometimes they can. And if you're lucky enough, they do. Never shall I relish in the fairy power of unreflecting love. Then on the shore of the wide world I stand alone, and think till love and fame to nothingness do sink. Now, there could be two ways of looking at this, that the poet, that Keats, maybe, and again, being of the Romantics, they love to be of a more pining, oh, woe is me stature. But it could be that, in my opinion, the way I see this poem, that, and when I feel, fair creature of an hour, that I shall never look upon thee more, never have relished in the fairy power, never have I had the chance to enjoy in all of this, that I have somehow missed my moment with you, that I would sink into something where nothing else mattered. Another way to look at that is that you become one person, that you become one living, breathing, full character of self, that you reflect upon yourself and someone else and lose yourself in that image of one person. That thing that I think all of us strive for, as far as not just as a kindred spirit or someone of the same ilk, but something much, much deeper than that. That you are able to reflect on them and see yourself. And that on the wide world, I stand alone, no longer needing, having found that happiness, having gotten out all of the expressions and got out all of the turmoil in your soul, and to be rid of all the fear and to have buried all the insecurities, to stand bravely with that one person and stand alone till love and fame and till nothingness do sink. That you grow beyond wanting to be famous, that you grow beyond wanting to be loved by everyone and instead loved by one. And when you do that, when you, in my opinion, when you give that love and you radiate that love and you give it to others freely, whether it be in a Judeo-Christian sense or just in the ethical sense of being a good person, you can allow all of those trappings and those fears to sink away and be free of that. And maybe it is to cease to be without that burden of worry, to cease to be without that terror of not having that person close to you, because you're always there with them. They'll always remember you. Just as those family members that have gone on to that better place that you miss so much now, they haven't ceased to be. They're right here. They're right here with us. And I think that Keats, for me, especially now as I come to sort of a crossroads on my feelings and what I want to create, and being in love and wanting to do what's right by them, and as well as those who are in the collective who believe in me and I believe in them, to these programs that I have with you, where I know that I'm doing something for posterity, that I'm doing something that for posterity that I love, and that I hope that people who watch this years from now could pick up on that same passion and say, I have not ceased to be. I am very much alive, and I have not lost fear, but I'm not going to let it beat me either. To allow all of that to fall away into a very peaceful, serene place where you wake up in the morning and simply be a new man, a new woman, a new team, or a new family.
I'll tell you what, Cliff, had I encountered these lectures that we're making right now as a younger man, as someone who's still trying to figure out what they were going to do with my life, I think it would have been highly convincing to study poetry, given the passion of which you speak. I think you are going to have an impact that can't be really quantified right now on the individuals that will take up the study of that subject, because your passion is on full display for it.
I can't appreciate. Honestly, I mean, again, it's not like, I mean, and I want people to know, though, you and I don't sit here and go, now when we're done, we're going to really pat each other on the back. I truly do believe every word you say, and it means, honestly, it always catches my breath to the fact that it hits home, and that it sticks. Because when I sit down and I spread out my lectures, I read what many people have looked at the poem, and then step back and say, well, I don't think any of these people sat down with Keats and said, hey, buddy, what did you mean with this? How did you? People want to take this poem and see it as a dour. The prevailing theory that I've gotten on this poem is that it's a very sad poem, and that he fears that he'll never get everything out. When I look at it in the place that I am in life, which is what people have to remember, is that you don't need to get so wrapped up in what they were thinking. Always do your homework. Always see what it is. But the beauty of poetry is that it always leaves that wiggle room for you to say, maybe that is what he meant back then. Maybe these scholars are all correct in what they put down on paper that they think their theories are correct from reading his bio. But for me, I see something very different. And I think Keats would be extremely happy with that. I don't think that anyone wants to be remembered as that poet that shuffled off, leaving a bunch of sad songs. Because as much as I love Ray LaMontagne, I can be in the best mood in the world, but start to listen halfway through his album and go, now I'm just going to go walk in front of a bus. Nobody loves me. You know, it can be great, but you can't be surrounded by so much sorrow all the time. It has its place, but there's enough room there within this poem to find a peace and to find a humility and to find a connection. And there's that connection that will keep us from ceasing to be, is that connection that we make from one generation to the next, to the next.
Well, I think what's really fantastic about literature, prose, and verse, and I don't have a robust theory about how to teach literature, but it seems like whenever it's recreated, whenever you do this recitation of Keats, or if, like we did a exploration of Flannery O'Connor's "A Good Man Is Hard to Find" with Danielle Cole last night.
Love that story.
Yeah, it's a wonderful story. It seems like it's okay for there to be a diversity of takes on a particular thing, because each take is like a new occasion for exploration that precipitates thought and meditation on higher things. There doesn't have to be the sort of final be all say all. This is what Keats meant. This is what Flannery O'Connor meant. It's kind of an occasion for self-exploration. Would you say that's kind of a workable approach to literature?
It is the exact way you need to approach it. I actually taught "A Good Man Is Hard to Find" in several of my classes last semester with the GD program of Chattahoochee Technical College. And so many students came in just furious. It's like, this is not the way it's supposed to end, and I'm not going to give the ending away for those who haven't read it yet. But, it's the idea that everything ends in this nice, quiet, serene way with a nice little bow on it, and everyone makes it out. And, the guy, and, just like in Die Hard, no matter how impossible it seems to pull off, he always does it in the end. Has a way of hitting us sideways. Yeah. And it's the best authors who are able to do that and leave you with that anger. And honestly, like, it's almost a story I didn't teach again. And Holly Holt, one of the best teachers I've ever worked with, she always stands at the door and waits for that reaction, because she and I love to see how words can make people impassioned again. Again, and students who have tossed off, especially thinking that stories are not really a viable source of passion, because now we have so much television and movies, and I'm not going to get all old man on you right now, but the fact that it can tie you back into that backlash of life isn't always fair. Life doesn't always have to be fair. Now, I did end up teaching "A Worn Path" by Eudora Welty the next week, just so we all did have a nice, fuzzy, happy story to kind of ballast, to bookmark that story. But, poetry does very much the same thing. Poetry can come in and I know that, especially like with me, I use the in rhyme, kind of sing-songy, the way people mostly associate poetry, to talk about really tragic things, because it kind of tricks somebody to bop along thinking that they're listening, it's kind of a fairy tale, in the end going, oh, wow, like a punch to the gut, that, some things that happen bad in life, just like some things that you think are going to be the worst thing in the world, end up being the best gifts you've ever been given. Sometimes those things that are given to you in this nice, pretty little frilly, glittery package can turn out to be rather rotten. So, I mean, literature in a sense is just like we've said the whole time, it's an absolute reflection of life.
And I'll have to say, we are going to be opening up the Noetic platform. We can have more of a conversation about this off camera. Yeah. So if you would like to teach short stories or something like that, but we can keep going with the poetry as well. And we probably should train our attention back to Keats, but that option is now available for what I'm building.
I'd love to. I would absolutely love to. And again, not abandoning poetry, but getting back to poetry, when I was looking over Keats, I found a very, very short one by Carl Sandburg. And he's another one that is one of my favorite poets because he's extremely accessible. He was a newspaper writer. He has a pretty eccentric past that we can get in. Maybe next week I'll end today's seminar with this short poem by him to kind of ease us out, because this morning was very foggy. And this one's called Fog by Carl Sandburg. And I just want to leave people with maybe just a lighthearted waft of poetry. And it's called Fog. The fog comes on little cat feet. It sits looking over harbor and city on silent haunches. and then moves on. And just like these seminars that we have here, it's a little moment of peaceful reflection, and no more than watching fog sift past, whether it's your yard, your city window, or across a bay. And in that fog, we can leave our trepidations and our fears, that when the sky opens, we can simply be happy.
Thank you, Cliff.
Thank you, brother.
All right. I'm going to end it. Thank you.